there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be showing you how I create cards with no stamps, no dies, and just a whole lot of fun. To start creating today, I'm going to be using this little non-stick silicone backed mat. This is the replacement mat for the glass mixed media mat from Holtz, and I just get the little replacement mat. I don't even own the glass media mat, but the replacement mat is the perfect size and has a really low price point for a non-stick mat for me. I am going to be using some watercolor paper. I always use the Holtz watercolor paper. I have the most success with that and I like that the most. I've got two different colors of Distress Oxide inks, and the first way that I can create a watercolor background is to spray down my watercolor cardstock with some water. Then I just kind of paint my inks on anywhere, it doesn't really matter, and then I can add a bit more water to get more movement and spread the colors around. Today I went with worn lipstick and mustard seed just for this one. So I add a little bit more water, wait till the colors move around a little bit more, and then I'm just going to pop this one aside to dry. Sometimes I use my heat tool to dry them, other times I just pop them aside and will leave them be. This time I'm using spun sugar, squeezed lemonade, and tumbled glass, and I'm going to do a different watercolor technique. So this time I'm going to smush them down onto the non-stick mat. And then this way I can add a little bit of water on top to kind of activate them and get them moving. Then I squish down my piece of watercolor paper and you are going to get your first result. And this very much, when you're using Oxide inks, is just a first result. This is, you can kind of splotch it down a little bit more. But the one great thing about Oxides, there are lots of them, but one of the great things is that you can dry and add layers. So if you dry in between and make sure it doesn't have to be perfectly dry, but 80% dry, then you can re-dip it down into your inks and you are going to layer on top of what you already have, and this just creates a really kind of fun, interesting background rather than it being quite so flat. So here I'm just making sure that it is mainly dry, mostly dry, and then I will just dip it back down into the inks that I already have, and I'm going to get some splotches and dots, and I like that the blues are on top of the yellow, the blues on top of the pink, and then I have some pink on top of the blue. It kind of means that the colors layer up on top of each other without kind of melting in and creating a whole new color. Otherwise, I did choose three colors that are going to go together nicely. Essentially, these are almost the primary colors, so they kind of, I know that they're all going to work well together, but if I don't like something, then I just add a little bit of water to it, and if I really like it, then I'll dip it in again. If I like what I have, I'll dry it so that I know that it's going to stay put, and the process can just keep on going. And then the third way that I'm going to do, actually maybe I have 4 ways in today's video, but the third way I'm going to use the new Villainous potion. Now, a very lovely kind friend of mine actually just sent me the Villainous potion. She thought that I should try it out. She heard in a previous video that I was really interested in getting a hold of it, so she sent that to me. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I do love this color. I must admit, it's something that I definitely needed to add to my stash. I don't have a color that is even remotely close to it, so I had been thinking about it, and now I'm really glad I've got it, so thank you. Now for this technique, I'm using a piece of acetate. I smush the inks down onto the acetate, then I give them a light spritz with water, and then I'm going to pop that down onto my watercolor cardstock, and you can get all sorts of different little bits here. And the nice thing is that you can kind of turn the acetate over and add little bits wherever you want them to go. You have slightly more control than you otherwise might of some of the other techniques, and again, you can definitely keep layering this up. You can dry in between and get all sorts of different kind of looks here. Now I must admit, where the pink and the purple join together, that color really reminds me of the Seedless Preserves color. Not quite, I think Seedless Preserves is a little bit more pink maybe, but it does look close to it, so that was really interesting. But I dried this in between, and then you can always turn your acetate back over again and re-blot it down. But I already felt like I was losing some of the pink, so instead I added a little bit more pink and then blotted that down on top. I used a little bit less water this time, so I got kind of a stronger ink color there, and then I'm going to dry this and put this one aside to move on to our last technique. I have some Salty Ocean Mowed Lawn and some fossilized amber, and again I have my watercolor cardstock. I am going to smush these down onto my non-stick sheet, and then this time I want to have a little bit more control over how I have a little border around my watercolor. So this is what I do. I put down a little thing of water on my non-stick sheet too, and then I draw with water where I want the ink to go. So I want to leave a white frame around this whole piece here, so I don't want it to go right to the edges like some of the others have, and I want to have that control. So basically anywhere where I have drawn with the water is where the ink is going to flow to, and that just gives me that little bit of extra control. Now I was going for kind of lighter backgrounds in this whole process because of the next step that we are going to do. So the colors that I have used in today's video are they're all kind of on the lighter side, and I use more water with them to kind of tone them down a little bit. Obviously you can go as dark as you want to, you can go as bright as you want to. If you were going to do like some white heat embossing or some gold heat embossing on top of some of these, some really dark navies and dark purples and things like that, everything would look gorgeous. But for today's purpose, I am going for the lighter side of things. So here I'm just adding in that really definitive border and making sure that I have not gone any further than where the water is or was originally, and then you just keep adding until you are happy and keep moving things around. And I think this is probably a case where I should have stopped earlier on, but I just kind of kept going, and that is one good thing, is that you can dry in between and just keep going and adding layers, and often something that you didn't love in the beginning you will end up finding that you can make something pretty cool out of it. So I'm going to dry this before I go any further at all, and then we are going to move on to what I'm going to do with some of these cards. Now, since all of this beautiful ink was sitting there, I couldn't resist just adding a couple of little splashes on this one. I mainly could stay away from the border, and even when I did get it around that white border, I was able to just wipe it off with my finger and it was gone if I didn't let it sit there for too long. So yeah, a couple of little splashes on this one just for something a little bit different. But this is how all of these cards ended up once they dried. This is what they looked like. So 4 different techniques that we've used, and all created pretty similar looks. Probably a couple of them are a little bit different, but pretty similar, I guess, for using inks as watercolors. And then this is the next stage for me. So sometimes I don't feel like doing lots of stamping or die cutting or anything too complicated. So I just have a black fine liner pen, and I'm just going to doodle some flowers on here. So this is just kind of doodle drawings to create my little card front. I mean, in my head, I'm going for some kind of daisy looking flower, not realistic, more cartoonish. I am just, as I don't claim to be any sort of artist at all, and if you are struggling or you would like some inspiration, you can Google image cartoon flowers, and then you will get lots come up that you can kind of do your best to have a look at and see what you could create out of those. You don't have to look at the most complicated ones. Sometimes simple is best, and that's often what I go for. I don't go for realistic because if I tried to it would end up interesting to say the least. So these are kind of whimsical, fun looking flowers. I didn't have a plan in mind when I was drawing these. I kind of just knew some of the shapes that I wanted to use. I was reading often. I get my ideas from children's books when I'm looking through them. I read a lot of books to my kids. We are a big books family, and then sometimes I just look at the pictures and think those would be really cool. So sometimes those ideas are from there, even just for lots of my card making, not necessarily just today's video. Yeah, so that is where I often get a lot of my ideas, because my brain tends to wander when I'm busy reading lots of books. Between my kids, I probably end up reading 20 to 30 books every night, so it feels like a lot. We love books in our family, so we really enjoy that time. But I must admit that I always am thinking of designs that I can add into my card making. So I just added, as I said, they are not realistic. I don't know what those little beaded flowers are, those beaded stems there. They're nothing. They're just little fillers, extra little bits and pieces. I add in some lines here and there, and then I am pretty much just going to move on because I'm done with that one for now. I'm going to take one more of the backgrounds that I did and then do some similar, I guess, design in flowers, just not quite the same. And then I quite liked a couple of those ones that I did before, so I'm going to pop some of those on. It's just a really easy swirl on top and then a nice big U shape underneath, and then I draw some wiggly kind of stems and we're away laughing, I guess. Add in a couple of little details if you think it needs it here and there. That often distracts people. And then I'm just going to add in another little flower to balance it out, and then a couple of leaves or a couple of those little beaded stems, I guess. I'm not sure what they are. I definitely, I mean, this is about as far as my talents go when it comes to drawing things. As I said, I don't even try and go near anything realistic. But sometimes if you just give it a go, you will surprise yourself with what you can create. And look everywhere for inspiration around you. Sometimes in flyers that come in the mail, or junk mail, or in the newspaper and magazines, there'll often be little designs as extra adverts and things. And I kind of just take note of those and just look everywhere for all this little inspiration that I add into my card making. For these ones here, I decided that I would colour these in with a little fine liner, and I just like that little extra bit of added darkness actually. I mean, if you wanted to, you could colour these in with a white pen as well, so that would also look really good if you wanted to add a little bit more contrast. These little pieces of grass or whatever I drew, who knows what they are, I add in some little dots, some little lines here and there, and then I think I am pretty much done with this one too. Although I must admit I did like the black where I coloured in the little petals or leaves of this one, so I'm going to bring in the other one and then just add in some little black to those beaded stems there. I just thought that added in something a little bit extra. Now when I was busy doing this, I did have my daughter by my side who was looking over my shoulder and wanting to have her turn at creating something similar, and so once I had done a couple of these, I actually let her take the rest of the backgrounds and she created her own, and with her permission I am going to share those at the end of this video too. So it was nice that she was kind of inspired by what she was seeing and thought that she was able to give it a go as well, and then she kind of took it and ran with it, which was really lovely to see. So to turn these into cards, I am just going to rip down the edges of this one. I just really like that look. It's a very whimsical kind of picture, so I like the kind of ripped look. I always rip away from me, and that means that the edges are going to stay looking the same. And then I just kind of really carefully and slowly rip, and they are not straight lines, but I guess they are straight-ish lines. And I'm going to, for the other one, draw a little black, very kind of easy peasy. As I said, it goes with the design, so it's really easy to add in a line like this and it kind of not look out of place. Just because things are not perfectly centered up, I actually do like it as is, but I do also like to have a little frame when I pop this one down onto my cards, so I am going to cut off just a little bit, and that also gives me the chance to center up that image just a little bit. It's not too bad, but it gives me the chance just to finish it off a little bit. Then for the first one, I decided that I wanted to ink up the edges, so I'm going to take the mustard seed ink and just go around those little torn edges, and this soaks up the ink really well so it becomes kind of dark, I guess. I use the mustard seed on the background of this one so it all ties in nicely, and then that way when I pop this down onto my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, it kind of is going to just shine off a little bit and make that white around the background really stand out. This one here has kind of more clean edges, but again that really whimsical feeling given that all of those cute little drawings there. I'm going to do some squiggles, some lines. This is reminiscent of the easy borders that I did around the simple scribble borders that I do around in images. I did a video on that not too long ago that was really took off on our Facebook page, and it was very popular. There are so many different versions of this, and people have done an amazing job with it, just taking it and running with it and creating their own style. So yeah, I really like just adding in those little details. And then these were my 2 cards that I finished off. I actually decided to leave these without sentiments. I did have a plan for them, but I changed my mind, and I just really like that they could be used for any occasion. Now, as I said, these are the 2 that I created. You did see my daughter's hands poking in just a minute ago, and then these are the 2 that she created that she wanted me to share with you. Now, this is the first one where she took the same idea of the flowers and things from me. I did put this little sticker on here. She wrote her full name, first, middle, and last name, and she asked for that to be covered up. So I did cover that up, but the rest of it, she has done some little bumblebees, and they are on the flowers. And then the second one, she wanted to make a Christmas scene, so she did some snowmen and snow ladies. So this is what she created, and these are just absolutely gorgeous, and this was all from just watching over my shoulder when I was creating mine. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next one. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See ya, bye.